Most people think seduction is about physical attraction, romance, or dating. But according to Robert Greene, seduction is actually a form of psychological warfare. The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene is not simply a book about romance. It is a study of attention, desire, emotional influence, and the hidden needs that shape human relationships. Beneath every attraction lies a story. Someone feels unseen. Someone wants to escape. Someone longs to be admired, understood, protected, or desired. And when another person appears to offer exactly that missing feeling, attraction can become almost impossible to resist. In this video, we will explore the hidden architecture of seduction. Why do certain people attract attention without asking for it? Why does mystery make desire stronger? Why can distance sometimes create more longing than closeness? And why do some people destroy attraction the moment they begin trying too hard? We will examine the seductive personalities described by Robert Greene, the behaviors that repel others, the emotional needs that make people vulnerable, and the stages through which attraction develops. But there is an important distinction. Understanding seduction should not mean learning how to deceive, pressure, or control another person. The deeper value of the book is learning how attraction works, recognizing manipulation when it appears, and becoming more intentional in the way we connect with others. Because real influence does not begin with force, it begins with attention. The psychology of seduction. Most people believe seduction begins with physical beauty, but beauty is only the surface. Real attraction begins when someone feels emotionally affected by your presence. They feel more alive around you, more interesting, more confident, more free. This is why seduction is psychological. A person may not be the most attractive individual in the room, yet everyone notices when they enter. They possess a certain energy. They listen deeply. They speak with calm certainty. They make people feel that something unusual is about to happen. The first principle is simple. Attention must move outward. The person who is obsessed with being admired becomes exhausting. The person who is genuinely curious about others becomes magnetic. The second principle is mystery. When everything about you is immediately visible, there is nothing left to discover. But when you reveal yourself gradually, people begin participating in the creation of your image. They fill in the gaps with imagination. And imagination is often more powerful than reality. The third principle is emotional contrast. A completely predictable person becomes familiar. A completely distant person becomes irrelevant. Attraction grows in the space between warmth and independence, openness and privacy, confidence and vulnerability. Finally, seduction requires an atmosphere. The same conversation can feel ordinary in one setting and unforgettable in another. Music, lighting, timing, language, clothing, silence, and shared rituals all influence the emotional meaning of an encounter. Seduction is not one action. It is the creation of an experience. The seductive personalities. Seductive role number 1, the siren. The siren represents escape. They offer a world beyond duty, routine, and responsibility. Their power comes from making life feel more vivid than it did before they arrived. The siren is not necessarily the most beautiful person in the room. Their true power lies in presence. Their voice, movements, style, and confidence create a feeling of danger mixed with pleasure. Cleopatra became legendary not only because of her appearance, but because she understood theater. She surrounded herself with symbols, ceremony, intelligence, and mystery. Being near her felt like entering another world. That is the siren's strength. They do not merely attract attention, they transform the atmosphere around them. To embody this quality, do not imitate a costume. Develop a presence that feels distinct. Become someone with a world of your own. But remember the danger of the siren. When mystery becomes deception, attraction turns into manipulation. The goal should not be to make someone lose control. It should be to create an experience in which both people remain free to choose. Seductive role number 2, the rake. The rake represents concentrated desire. Unlike the hesitant person who hides their interest, the rake makes the other person feel wanted. Their attention is direct, intense, and emotionally charged. The rake's power comes from focus. For a brief moment, the other person feels like the center of the universe. The rake does not appear distracted, uncertain, or half-interested. Their passion creates emotional heat. But intensity without respect becomes pressure. The healthy version of the rake is not obsession. It is the courage to express genuine interest without pretending indifference. Desire becomes attractive when it is honest, confident, and responsive to boundaries. Seductive role number 3, the ideal lover. Everyone carries an unfinished dream. Some people long for adventure. Others want refinement, tenderness, recognition, or emotional depth. The ideal lover notices what another person values and connects with that hidden ideal. Madame de Pompadour understood this principle. She did not merely entertain Louis XV, she introduced art, culture, conversation, and imagination into his life. She became associated with the part of himself he wanted to express. The ideal lover does not flatter randomly. They pay attention. They notice the subjects someone returns to, the ambitions they hide, and the disappointments they rarely discuss. Then they encourage those qualities instead of trying to replace them. The lesson is not to become whatever another person wants. It is to notice what brings out their best self. Seductive role number 4, the dandy. The dandy refuses to fit neatly into social expectations. They mix qualities that people are not accustomed to seeing together: strength and elegance, softness and boldness, seriousness and playfulness. Their appeal comes from freedom. The dandy seems less concerned with receiving approval because they are busy creating their own identity. Their style becomes a statement of independence. Figures such as Oscar Wilde understood that ambiguity creates fascination. When people cannot place you immediately, they become curious. But the modern lesson is not to perform confusion. It is to stop shrinking yourself to fit a role assigned by other people. A person who is comfortable with their complexity gives others permission to explore their own. Seductive role number 5, the natural. The natural carries playfulness into adulthood. They laugh easily, remain curious, and do not treat every interaction like a performance. Their openness lowers defenses because people feel less judged around them. The natural reminds others of a quality they may have lost: spontaneity. They do not need to dominate a room. Their energy creates movement. Conversations become lighter. Ordinary experiences become more enjoyable. The danger comes when innocence is manufactured. False vulnerability and exaggerated helplessness may attract attention temporarily, but they eventually create distrust. The real natural does not pretend to be powerless. They simply remain open to wonder. Seductive role number 6, the coquette. The coquette understands the power of space. They do not reveal everything at once. They maintain an independent life, preserve their privacy, and avoid making another person the center of their identity. This can create tension because desire needs room to breathe. However, there is a difference between independence and emotional punishment. Deliberately creating anxiety, withholding affection to control someone, or using jealousy as a weapon is not healthy seduction. It is manipulation. The positive lesson of the coquette is restraint. Do not rush intimacy. Do not abandon your own life. Let interest develop at a natural pace. Seductive role number 7, the charmer. The charmer makes other people feel better about themselves. They do not compete for attention. They make space for others to speak. They notice small details and offer encouragement without making it feel forced. A charmer brings relief. In a world filled with judgment, pressure, and self-promotion, someone who listens calmly can feel extraordinary. To become more charming, shift the spotlight outward. Ask better questions. Remember what people tell you. Avoid turning every conversation into a performance about yourself. The charmer does not make people feel conquered. They make people feel understood. Seductive role number 8, the charismatic. Charisma is more than confidence. It is the impression that someone has direction, purpose, and emotional force. Charismatic people seem connected to a larger vision, even when their goals are simple. They speak with conviction. They remain composed under pressure. Their gestures feel intentional. John F. Kennedy understood the theatrical side of leadership. His public image combined youth, confidence, elegance, and purpose. People did not merely hear his words. They felt invited into a future. Charisma usually contains several qualities: Purpose, a clear direction. Conviction, the ability to speak as if the idea matters. Presence, full attention in the moment. Mystery, a private dimension that is not displayed constantly. Vulnerability, enough humanity to remain relatable. Courage, a willingness to act despite uncertainty. Charisma without ethics can become dangerous. That is why the most important form of charisma is responsibility. Seductive role number 9, the star. The star attracts through distance. They do not make themselves constantly available. Their image carries a quality of beauty, mystery, or possibility. People project dreams onto the star because the star leaves room for imagination. The danger is exposure. When every detail is displayed, mystery disappears. Constant self-promotion turns fascination into familiarity. The modern star is not someone who hides completely. They reveal selectively. They understand that a memorable image is built not only from what is shown, but also from what remains private. The 10 anti-seducers. Robert Greene describes several anti-seducers, people whose insecurity turns connection into pressure. Number 1, the brute. The brute rushes. They believe desire can be forced through persistence, demands, or authority. They ignore hesitation and treat boundaries as obstacles. But attraction cannot be commanded. The moment someone feels pressured, emotional openness disappears. Number 2, the vain. The vain turns every interaction back toward themselves. They want admiration but rarely offer attention. They perform instead of connecting. Confidence becomes attractive only when it leaves room for another person. Number 3, the miser. The miser is ungenerous with time, warmth, effort, and attention. Their scarcity makes every relationship feel like negotiation. Generosity, however, does not require excessive spending. It can mean thoughtful effort, presence, patience, or kindness. Number 4, the chatterbox. The chatterbox fears silence. They fill every pause with explanations, stories, and unnecessary details. But silence can create comfort and anticipation. A good conversation is not measured by how much one person says. It is measured by how much space both people have to exist. Number 5, the sensitive one. The sensitive one treats every joke, disagreement, or misunderstanding as a personal attack. They make others afraid to be spontaneous. Emotional maturity does not mean having no feelings. It means being able to experience feelings without making everyone else responsible for them. Number 6, the bumbler. The bumbler overthinks every move. They apologize constantly, second-guess themselves, and turn simple interactions into performances of anxiety. The solution is not perfection, it is presence. Number 7, the suffocator. The suffocator confuses constant contact with intimacy. They demand immediate replies, excessive reassurance, and continuous attention. Instead of creating closeness, they create pressure. Healthy connection includes both togetherness and independence. Number 8, the moralizer. The moralizer cannot allow others to enjoy themselves without judgment. They turn every conversation into a lesson and every preference into a test. People are naturally drawn to those who make them feel free to be human. Number 9, the windbag. The windbag does not understand that fewer words can carry more weight. They explain every intention and remove every possibility of mystery. A clear statement is valuable. Endless explanation is often insecurity wearing the mask of honesty. Number 10, the vulgarian. The vulgarian destroys atmosphere through carelessness. They show off money, overshare too quickly, exaggerate their achievements, or make their desires obvious without considering the other person's comfort. Refinement is not expensive clothing or luxury. It is sensitivity to timing, setting, language, and boundaries. Who gets seduced? Seduction often begins with an emotional gap. People are drawn toward experiences that seem to answer something missing in their lives. Number 1, the nostalgic. The nostalgic longs for a lost period. Childhood, youth, a former relationship, or a simpler version of life. They are moved by familiar music, places, traditions, and memories. The ethical lesson is not to exploit their past. It is to understand how memory shapes emotional connection. Number 2, the escapist. The escapist feels trapped by routine. They crave adventure, movement, risk, and change. They are attracted to people who embody a wider world. But no relationship can permanently replace a person's need to change their own life. Number 3, the self-indulgent. The self-indulgent wants to be accepted without constant correction. They may be unusual, emotional, ambitious, or insecure. They are drawn to people who can see their individuality without immediately trying to reshape it. Acceptance is powerful, but it should not mean tolerating harmful behavior. Number 4, the seeker. The seeker has an ideal in mind. They are searching for a person, place, or experience that reflects their vision of love or meaning. Their imagination may cause them to fall in love with a possibility before they fully know the person. This is why reality matters. A powerful connection should survive the transition from fantasy to ordinary life. The seductive victim archetypes. Beyond the broad personality types, Robert Greene identifies more specific psychological profiles. These are not simply categories. Each one is shaped by a distinct wound, frustration, or hunger. Each carries something missing beneath the surface, and when someone appears to offer that missing piece, attraction can become unusually powerful. The key is not what people show publicly. It is what they secretly want to feel again. Number 1, the reformed rake or siren. The reformed rake or siren once lived for attention. They were admired, pursued, and constantly surrounded by desire. But time has passed. They may now appear settled, responsible, or even indifferent to their former life. Deep down, however, they still miss the feeling of being magnetic. They want to know that the old power has not disappeared. To connect with this type, do not flatter them too obviously. Instead, treat them as if their former charm is still present. Give them the feeling that they have not lost their ability to attract. The illusion of rediscovering their old self can be more powerful than any compliment. Number 2, the disappointed dreamer. The disappointed dreamer grew up believing in grand romance, epic adventure, and a life that would feel larger than ordinary existence. They may have filled their imagination with novels, films, music, and stories of perfect love. But reality rarely follows a script. Work becomes repetitive. Relationships become practical. The extraordinary begins to feel distant. Yet the dream never completely disappears. The disappointed dreamer is drawn to anyone who makes life feel cinematic again. A late-night conversation, an unexpected journey, or a mysterious encounter can become the beginning of an entire fantasy. Their imagination does much of the work. But there is a danger. When reality becomes too predictable, the illusion begins to fade. The challenge is not to create a false life, but to help them rediscover wonder in the real one. Number 3, the spoiled child. The spoiled child has rarely had to wait for anything. Attention, comfort, affection, and luxury arrived easily, but having everything can produce its own form of emptiness. Boredom. The spoiled child constantly seeks novelty. They want excitement, stimulation, and experiences that make them feel alive. Yet beneath this hunger for change is another need: stability. They want someone who can surprise them without becoming chaotic. Someone who offers adventure while still providing a sense of safety. The balance is delicate. Too much routine, and they become restless. Too much instability, and they feel unprotected. They are drawn to the person who can create movement without losing control. Number 4, the prude. The prude lives through appearances. They care about respectability, rules, and the opinions of others. In public, they may seem rigid, controlled, and morally certain. But beneath that controlled surface may exist a fascination with everything they have forbidden themselves from wanting. The prude is often attracted to a glimpse of rebellion. Not complete recklessness, but enough danger to challenge their carefully constructed identity. They do not want to be attacked for their principles. They want to experience freedom without immediately having to admit that they desired it. The lesson is subtle. A hint of mystery can awaken curiosity. Pressure, however, only strengthens resistance. Number 5, the fallen star. The fallen star once lived in the spotlight. They may have been beautiful, talented, influential, or admired. At some point, however, attention shifted elsewhere. The world moved on, and the applause became quieter. Outwardly, they may claim not to care. Inside, they still remember what it felt like to be watched, praised, and wanted. The fallen star responds strongly to anyone who restores that sense of visibility. Make them feel noticed for their presence, their abilities, and the qualities others have stopped appreciating. But do not reduce them to their past glory. What they truly crave is not empty praise. It is the feeling that they still possess something rare. Number 6, the novice. The novice stands at the edge of experience. They are inexperienced, but that inexperience is mixed with intense curiosity. They want to understand the world they have only observed from a distance. The novice is often drawn to someone who can act as a guide. They want reassurance, but they also want discovery. They are attracted to a person who combines safety with a sense of adventure. The most powerful force here is imagination. The novice does not need every detail explained. A small gesture, a new experience, or a mysterious suggestion can open an entire world in their mind. But guidance should never become control. A genuine connection gives the novice confidence rather than taking advantage of their lack of experience. Number 7, the competitor. The competitor sees life as a challenge. They enjoy obstacles, contests, and the feeling of pursuing something difficult. Easy victories rarely satisfy them. If everything is handed over immediately, their interest may disappear. What excites them is not only possession, it is the chase. They want to feel that something must be earned. A person who maintains independence and self-respect can become far more interesting to them than someone who agrees with everything. But competition can easily become emotional manipulation. The healthy version of this archetype is mutual challenge. Two people encouraging each other to grow, rather than one person deliberately creating insecurity. Number 8, the exotic fanatic. The exotic fanatic is drawn to the unfamiliar. They crave new cultures, unusual ideas, distinctive styles, and ways of living that break the monotony of routine. What they desire most is not comfort, it is escape. They are attracted to anyone who seems to open a door into another world. This could come through travel, art, language, philosophy, fashion, or simply an unconventional way of seeing life. The exotic fanatic is fascinated by difference, but the difference must be genuine. Pretending to be mysterious or foreign eventually feels empty. The strongest attraction comes from having a real world of your own. Number 9, the drama seeker. The drama seeker finds calm and uncomfortable. They need emotional highs and lows to feel alive. Arguments, jealousy, reconciliation, excitement, and disappointment become part of their emotional rhythm. For them, peace can feel like emptiness. They may repeatedly create crises and then mistake the intensity of those crises for evidence of love. The more unstable the relationship becomes, the more meaningful it seems. This archetype is especially vulnerable to emotional volatility. But the lesson is not to create chaos for them. It is to recognize the difference between passion and instability. A relationship can be intense without being destructive. Number 10, the overthinker. The overthinker analyzes everything. Every message, pause, gesture, and change in tone becomes something to interpret. Their intelligence gives them insight, but it can also prevent them from simply experiencing the moment. Deep down, they long for an experience that cannot be reduced to logic. They are drawn to spontaneity, emotion, movement, and sensory presence. They want someone who can pull them out of their thoughts and back into life. The best connection for the overthinker is not one that creates more confusion. It is one that gives them permission to stop analyzing for a moment. Number 11, the beauty. Beauty has spent a lifetime being noticed for appearance. Admiration gave them power, but it also created a prison. They may wonder whether people see their personality, intelligence, talent, or character, or only their face and body. Beauty craves recognition for what exists beneath the surface. Compliments about appearance may please them, but they rarely satisfy them for long. What reaches deeper is attention to their mind, their abilities, their humor, and their private qualities. The person who sees beyond the image becomes memorable. They offer something a mirror never can: recognition of the whole person. Number 12, the perpetual adolescent. The perpetual adolescent avoids responsibility. They continue to seek play, excitement, and indulgence long after life demands greater maturity. They may move between jobs, relationships, plans, and identities without fully committing to any of them. But beneath the freedom is often a quiet desire for support. They want someone steady enough to lean on without making them feel ashamed of their immaturity. The attractive quality here is dependability. Patience, structure, and consistency can provide the safety they have avoided creating for themselves. However, support should not become parenthood. A healthy relationship encourages growth rather than rewarding permanent irresponsibility. Number 13, the rescuer. The rescuer is drawn to vulnerability. They are attracted to people who need help, healing, protection, or guidance. Their kindness may be genuine, but underneath it can exist a deeper need, to feel indispensable. They want to be the one who saves. The rescuer often overlooks healthy, self-sufficient people because there is no crisis to solve. They are drawn toward visible wounds and complicated histories. This makes them vulnerable to anyone who performs helplessness. The danger is clear. A relationship built entirely around rescue eventually becomes exhausting. Care should be mutual, not a permanent strategy for keeping someone attached. Number 14, the jaded sophisticate. The jaded sophisticate has experienced almost everything. They have known attention, pleasure, travel, romance, success, or excess. As a result, very little surprises them anymore. They are difficult to impress because they have already seen the usual performances. What reaches them is authenticity. A glimpse of innocence, sincerity, or uncalculated joy can break through their boredom. They are not looking for another polished performance. They want something that feels untouched by repetition. The jaded sophisticate is attracted to what cannot easily be purchased or staged. Number 15, the devotee. The devotee needs something to believe in. They search for a person, cause, philosophy, or ideal that rises above ordinary life. Their emotional energy is directed toward admiration and faith. This can make them deeply loyal, but also vulnerable to anyone who performs certainty. The devotee is attracted to conviction. They want to see someone who appears guided by purpose, discipline, or vision. But belief can become blind attachment. The healthiest form of devotion is built on reality. It allows admiration without surrendering judgment. Number 16, the sensualist. The sensualist experiences life through the senses. Color, texture, music, fragrance, food, movement, and atmosphere affect them deeply. They respond less to abstract promises and more to the feeling of being immersed in a beautiful environment. For the sensualist, details matter. The setting, the sound in the background, the quality of the light, the texture of a room, and the rhythm of a conversation can matter more than a carefully prepared speech. Their world is emotional because it is physical. To connect with them, create experiences rather than explanations. But remember that atmosphere can enhance a connection. It cannot replace sincerity. Number 17, the powerful and isolated. Power creates distance. Leaders, executives, celebrities, and influential people are surrounded by those who want something from them. They receive praise constantly, but honesty becomes rare. The powerful and isolated is not hungry for more flattery. They are hungry for someone who treats them like an ordinary human being. A person who can speak honestly, disagree respectfully, and remain unimpressed by status may become deeply significant to them. The key is not disrespect, it is equality. They want relief from the performance of power. They want a space where they do not have to command, impress, or protect their image. Number 18, the repressed. The repressed feels trapped by expectations. They may believe they must look, behave, speak, or live according to a rigid identity. A part of themselves has been hidden because it seemed unacceptable. They are drawn to people who express freedom. Someone who combines strength with softness, seriousness with playfulness, or tradition with individuality can awaken a possibility they have suppressed. The repressed does not necessarily want to become someone else. They want permission to become more of themselves. The most powerful connection is one that encourages self-expression, rather than replacing one form of control with another. These archetypes appear different, but they share the same foundation. Nobody feels completely whole. One person misses their former power. Another longs for adventure. Someone else wants stability, recognition, escape, guidance, or freedom. The person who understands that missing piece gains influence, not because they have discovered a weapon, but because they have discovered where emotion is concentrated. That is the deepest lesson of the seductive victim archetypes. People do not simply fall for appearances. They fall toward whatever seems to complete a story inside them. And the wiser question is not, how can I use someone's hunger? It is, what hunger is shaping this person, and is this connection helping them become more whole or making them more dependent? How does seduction actually happen? By now you have seen every side of the game. You know the qualities that attract people, you have recognized the traits that destroy attraction, and you have met the different targets, their desires, their insecurities, and the emotional gaps they secretly want someone to fill. So now comes the real question. How does seduction move from a moment of interest to a force powerful enough to reshape judgment? Because seduction is not a clever line, a perfect look, or a single dramatic gesture. It is a process. A gradual movement from curiosity to attention, from attention to emotion, from emotion to fantasy, and from fantasy to attachment. Robert Greene divides this process into 4 phases. But there is an important distinction. Understanding these phases should not mean exploiting someone's weakness. It should mean recognizing when influence is becoming manipulation, especially when secrecy, isolation, confusion, or pressure replace honesty and consent. The seducer leads through atmosphere, timing, suggestion, and emotional intensity. The ethical person notices those forces without using them to take away another person's freedom. If you rush, the illusion breaks. But if you hide your intentions completely, the connection becomes deception. The power of seduction is not only in the ending, it is in the anticipation, the waiting, the uncertainty, and the story people begin telling themselves along the way. Phase 1. Separation. Phase 1 is separation. Every seduction begins with a break from the ordinary. Someone is absorbed in work, routine, responsibility, or an existing emotional world. Then something interrupts that pattern. A new person appears. A new possibility emerges. A question forms in the mind. Curiosity begins when ordinary life no longer feels complete. The ethical danger begins when that curiosity is deliberately turned into dependence. Every connection begins before the first word is spoken. It begins with who you choose to approach. Casanova understood that attraction is rarely created in a vacuum. He was drawn to people who felt dissatisfied with their circumstances, those trapped in routine, neglected in relationships, or hungry for something beyond the life they were living. That hunger made them receptive, but it also made them vulnerable. In Les Liaisons Dangereuses, the Vicomte de Valmont encounters Madame de Tourvel, a serious and devoted married woman. She is not the obvious target. She is restrained, principled, and apparently beyond his reach. That is precisely what makes her interesting to him. For Valmont, her resistance turns attraction into a challenge. Her innocence becomes something to conquer. And this reveals the darker side of choosing a target. The person who seems most difficult to influence may become the most exciting, not because they are the best match, but because their boundaries create a challenge to someone's ego. A healthier question is not who is easiest to influence. It is who is genuinely available, interested, and capable of choosing freely. Study people, but do not hunt for weakness. Notice what energizes them, notice what they value, notice whether interest is mutual. A blush may be an attraction. A nervous laugh may be uncomfortable. Silence may be hesitation. The first discipline of influence is learning not to mistake vulnerability for permission. The second movement is approaching. People rarely open themselves to someone who feels threatening. Trust grows through familiarity, conversation, and repeated evidence that a person is safe. This is where indirect connection can be powerful. Friendship may slowly become an attraction. Shared interests may create closeness. A conversation may deepen before either person names what is happening. History is full of examples. The Duchesse de Montpensier, known as La Grande Mademoiselle, was one of the wealthiest women in 17th century France. Many men approached her because of her fortune. Then came the Duke of Lauzun. Instead of beginning with obvious flirtation, he built familiarity through conversation, theater, poetry, politics, ordinary subjects that created extraordinary closeness. Over time, his presence became part of her routine. She began to notice when he was absent. That is the power of familiarity. Someone can become emotionally important before the relationship has been clearly defined. But there is a difference between allowing attraction to develop naturally and pretending to be a friend while secretly collecting information to exploit. A false sense of security is not trust. It is camouflage. Real intimacy requires that both people understand what kind of relationship is forming. Friendship should not be used as a concealed strategy for bypassing someone's defenses. The strongest connection is not the one where a person believes they were manipulated into falling. It is the one where both people can look back and recognize the truth of what happened. It is easy to attract attention. It is harder to sustain it. People become curious about what they cannot immediately understand. Mystery creates space for imagination. A person reveals something, but not everything. They remain distinct, unpredictable, and difficult to reduce to a simple image. Queen Elizabeth I understood the power of contradiction. She cultivated the image of the Virgin Queen, pure, untouchable, almost sacred. Yet she also flirted with her courtiers, offered warmth, and allowed powerful men to imagine special access to her. Was she a romantic figure? A political strategist? A woman beyond possession? The ambiguity kept people fascinated. But there is a difference between mystery and mixed signals. Mystery leaves room for discovery. Mixed signals create uncertainty about whether someone is wanted, rejected, safe, or being emotionally tested. That uncertainty can become addictive, but addiction is not the same as intimacy. Show different dimensions of yourself: confidence and vulnerability, seriousness and humor, independence and warmth. Do not manufacture contradictions simply to keep someone unstable. The goal is not to make another person question their worth. It is to remain complex enough that genuine discovery never ends. Desire is often social. When people see others responding warmly to someone, that response influences their own perception. Attention creates attention. Admiration can make a person appear more valuable. Rudolph Valentino became one of the great symbols of this phenomenon. He was not simply presented as handsome, he was presented as desired. On screen, women trembled at his presence. Audiences watched other characters respond to him, and that reaction became part of his appeal. People did not only want Valentino, they wanted the man everyone else seemed to want. This is the psychology of social proof. But it can easily become performance. Surrounding yourself with admirers, inventing romantic interest, or provoking jealousy may create short-term attention, but it also turns relationships into contests. The healthier form of desirability comes from a life that already has meaning. Friends who genuinely value you, work that gives you purpose, interests that exist beyond one person's approval. A person who is fulfilled is often more attractive than someone desperately trying to appear in demand. Do not sell yourself directly. Become someone whose presence has substance. But never confuse rarity with emotional unavailability. Being difficult to possess is not the same as being worthy of trust. Curiosity alone does not last forever. Eventually, it must become a desire. That transformation happens when someone begins to imagine what an experience with you might feel like. Casanova encountered this force through the courtesan Marianne de Charpillon. She fascinated him partly because she refused to make herself easily accessible. Each moment of progress seemed to be followed by another boundary. The chase consumed him. He wanted not only her affection, but the victory of obtaining what had been withheld. This is where temptation becomes dangerous. A person can desire something more intensely when it is unavailable. But deliberate withholding, emotional provocation, and calculated frustration can create a cycle where the pursuit becomes more important than the person. Imagination is powerful. A half-finished story can occupy the mind longer than a complete one. A shared moment, a private joke, or an unexplained absence can become emotionally significant. But healthy desire does not require deprivation. It requires space. Space to wonder, space to choose, space to miss someone without being punished for it. The aim should not be to make another person feel incomplete without you. It should be to create an experience they value while remaining free to walk away. Predictability can make attraction feel ordinary, but unpredictability can also create anxiety. The difference lies in whether uncertainty feels playful or threatening. Casanova mastered timing. He delayed encounters, created dramatic reunions, and allowed anticipation to build. Waiting transformed ordinary moments into events. Suspense works because the mind completes unfinished patterns. What will happen next? What does that look mean? Why did they leave just as the conversation became intimate? But emotional suspense should never become punishment. Silence used to create space is different from silence used to produce panic. A delayed reply may be harmless. Repeated disappearance designed to make someone doubt themselves is not. The ethical use of suspense is rhythm. Sometimes conversation. Sometimes solitude. Sometimes a new experience. Sometimes a moment of quiet. A relationship should not feel like a locked room in which one person controls the light. Ask yourself, when people leave your presence, do they feel energized and curious or anxious and insecure? That answer reveals whether your mystery is creating attraction or manufacturing dependence. The most powerful message is sometimes the one that leaves room for interpretation. A direct compliment can be appreciated and forgotten. A subtle observation can remain in the mind for days. Benjamin Disraeli understood this in his relationship with Queen Victoria. Rather than flatter her in obvious terms, he often used wit, implication, and carefully chosen comparisons. His remarks felt less like praise and more like recognition. That made them powerful. Suggestion works because people participate in creating the meaning. They do not merely receive an idea, they complete it themselves. A phrase such as, "There is something different about you when you talk about that," can invite reflection without making a demand. But suggestion becomes manipulation when it conceals an intention that the other person would reject if stated openly. Ambiguity should invite conversation, not prevent it. Early attraction may need mystery. Eventually, clarity must arrive. People rarely change because they have been defeated in an argument. They change when they feel understood. Casanova adapted his language to the person in front of him. With a devout woman, he spoke about faith. As an intellectual, he debated ideas. With someone lonely, he offered sympathy. Each person felt seen. But Greene's observation contains a warning. Mirroring can create connection, or it can become imitation. Barack Obama demonstrated the public power of emotional adaptation. His tone shifted depending on the audience. With workers, students, families, or political groups, he adjusted his rhythm and emphasis so that people felt he understood their experience. This is not simply seduction. It is communication. The ethical communicator listens for the world another person inhabits. They learn what matters to them without pretending to become someone else. People are often attracted to those who reflect their ideal self, the person they hope to become. If someone dreams of adventure, you may awaken that possibility through shared experience. If they long for refinement, you may introduce them to art, ideas, or beauty. But do not become a mirror so perfect that the other person cannot see your own face. Real connection is not self-erasure. It is mutual recognition. Phase 2. Confusion and suspense. At this stage, interest is real, but fragile. The person is deciding whether to move closer or protect themselves. This is where many seducers create emotional intensity through alternating closeness and distance. The result can feel like passion. But it may also be intermittent reinforcement, the psychological pattern in which unpredictable rewards create stronger attachment than consistent ones. A person begins chasing the next moment of warmth. They start treating uncertainty as evidence of depth. This is one of the clearest points at which seduction can turn into emotional control. Words do more than communicate information. They create images, moods, and emotional associations. The most memorable words do not explain everything. They evoke a feeling. Casanova understood this in his letters. He often used rhythm, suggestion, and implication rather than plain declarations. His lovers were left to fill in the spaces between his sentences. They did not simply respond to what he wrote. They responded to what his words allowed them to imagine. A sentence such as, "It is strange how calm I feel when you are here," communicates intimacy without making a demand. But words can also be used to bypass judgment. Love bombing, exaggerated promises, and carefully designed phrases can make a person feel understood before trust has actually been earned. Use language to reveal emotion, not to conceal intention. Do not say what will produce the strongest response. Say what is true. A feeling can be poetic and still honest. Seduction rarely lives in grand spectacle. Grand gestures attract attention, but small details create the feeling of being seen. Rudolph Valentino understood that his appeal was built from precision. His clothing, movement, posture, and surroundings worked together to create an entire atmosphere. Years later, actors such as Timothée Chalamet would use a similar principle in a different form. Careful styling disguised as effortlessness, pauses that seem natural but are precisely placed, and a presence that draws attention without demanding it. The effect is not one isolated gesture. It is coherence. Remembering someone's favorite artist. Returning to a topic they mentioned weeks earlier. Choosing a setting where they feel comfortable. These details communicate attention. But attention should not become surveillance. There is a difference between remembering what someone shares and collecting personal information to use against them. Details matter because they say you matter. They should never say, "I've been studying how to control you." Seduction dies every day when everything becomes predictable. It comes alive when a person becomes associated with a feeling. Lord Byron understood this instinctively. His life was filled with travel, scandal, romance, and artistic drama. People did not only want to know him, they wanted to become part of his story. Marcel Proust explored a similar idea through the character Swann. Swann becomes obsessed with a woman partly because of the emotional association surrounding her, a melody, a memory, a moment that transforms her image. The music becomes attached to the person. The person becomes attached to the feeling. This is how memory creates emotional permanence. A place, a ritual, a song, or a shared tradition can give a relationship its own symbolic world, but never confuse atmosphere with character. Beautiful surroundings can intensify a moment. They cannot create trust where none exists. The goal is not to turn yourself into a fantasy that another person can never question. It is to make ordinary life feel meaningful without making reality disappear. Confidence attracts, but perfection creates distance. People trust those who reveal some evidence of humanity. Princess Diana understood this better than most public figures. Although surrounded by royal protocol and global attention, she allowed moments of shyness, uncertainty, warmth, and visible emotion to enter the public image. Those moments made her seem reachable. The crown remained, but the person became visible beneath it. Vulnerability can create empathy because it allows another person to feel needed, not as a servant, but as a fellow human being. A small admission, a sincere apology, the courage to say, "I was afraid." These moments can deepen intimacy. But vulnerability used as bait is another form of deception. If someone reveals pain only to trigger rescue, create obligation, or gain access, the emotion becomes a performance. Healthy vulnerability does not demand that the other person become responsible for your stability. It offers truth and allows the other person to respond freely. Every person lives partly in a dream. We imagine adventure, escape, success, love, and transformation. The seducer enters that dream and makes it feel close enough to touch. Cleopatra understood the power of the atmosphere. Her encounters with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were wrapped in ritual, symbolism, luxury, perfume, light, and spectacle. Reality did not disappear. It was transformed into a story. That is the power of illusion. A familiar place can feel extraordinary when the emotional atmosphere changes. A dinner becomes a scene. A journey becomes an escape. A night drive becomes a world outside of time. But desire becomes dangerous when it is allowed to override evidence. The story of Bernard Borsicot and Chi-Pei Pu demonstrates how completely a person can inhabit a fantasy. Borsiko believed he was involved in a long-term relationship with a woman who, in reality, had concealed fundamental truths from him. His desire helped protect the illusion from facts that might have exposed it. He did not merely believe the story. He needed it to be true. That is the danger of confusing desire with reality. Beauty, romance, and atmosphere can enrich life. But if a fantasy requires you to ignore contradiction, secrecy, or harm, it is no longer enchantment. It is captivity. Isolation is one of the most dangerous tools in manipulation. The less contact a person has with friends, family, routines, and independent sources of judgment, the more powerful one relationship can become. Historically, Rasputin's influence over Empress Alexandra grew during a period of fear surrounding her son's illness. He presented himself as a source of comfort and spiritual certainty, while court hostility made her feel increasingly misunderstood. He became, in her eyes, the person who truly understood her. That is how psychological isolation develops. Not always through a locked door. Sometimes through the repeated message that everyone else is jealous, foolish, hostile, or incapable of understanding. A manipulator does not need to remove every person from someone's life. They only need to convince the person that no one else is trustworthy. This principle has appeared in romances, political movements, religious groups, and personality-driven organizations. Leaders create a private world in which loyalty to them becomes proof of courage, while disagreement becomes betrayal. Healthy intimacy does the opposite. It expands a person's world. It does not demand the abandonment of friends, family, work, or identity. If someone's love requires you to become smaller and more alone, it is not protection. It is control. Eventually, words lose their power. People begin to wonder, are you sincere? Will you remain present when things become difficult? Can your actions support your promises? Proof matters. But proof should not require reckless sacrifice, public humiliation, or dangerous tests. The strongest proof is consistency. Showing up when you said you would. Keeping private information private. Apologizing without turning the apology into another performance. Supporting someone without demanding that they repay you emotionally. History often celebrates dramatic acts. The person who risks everything, defies authority, or arrives in the middle of the night. Those moments can be powerful. But a single dramatic gesture does not prove character. Sometimes it only proves someone knows how to create drama. True trust is built through repeated evidence. And resistance is not always a test. Sometimes resistance means no. The most important distinction in seduction is the difference between an obstacle and a boundary. An obstacle invites patience. A boundary demands respect. Phase 3, going deeper. The third phase reaches beneath conscious intention. Memories, nostalgia, identity, fear, longing. The connection begins to feel larger than the present moment. This is where people may experience regression, the return to emotional states associated with childhood, first love, innocence, rebellion, or dependence. Those emotions can create tenderness. They can also make adults vulnerable to being treated like children. Most people do not literally want to become children again. They want relief from the pressure of adulthood. They want to feel playful, curious, spontaneous, and free from constant responsibility. Nostalgia can open that door. A conversation about childhood. A return to a meaningful place. A game, a song, or a forgotten dream. These experiences can make a person feel young, not helpless, but alive. Actors such as Timothée Chalamet often project a mixture of softness, uncertainty, and fragile confidence. That combination can awaken the instinct to protect, especially in people exhausted by the demands of adult life. But there is a boundary. Comfort should not become parental control. Guidance should not become discipline imposed on an equal partner. And innocence should never be used to excuse irresponsibility. The healthy version of this principle is simple. Help people reconnect with parts of themselves they have neglected. Do not make them dependent on you to access those parts. Nothing intensifies desire like a boundary. The moment something feels forbidden, attention sharpens. Rules create tension. Social obstacles turn private emotion into a dramatic story. That is why forbidden romances have fascinated people for centuries. When Prince Harry married Meghan Markle, the relationship was viewed through the tension between personal choice and royal expectation. The conflict with tradition became part of the public story. The obstacle enlarged the romance. But not every forbidden relationship is noble. An affair may feel intense because secrecy amplifies emotion. A relationship across a social boundary may feel thrilling because it challenges convention. Yet the excitement of transgression can hide the cost to other people. The ethical question is not only, does this feel powerful? It is also, who is harmed by the rule being broken? Breaking an outdated social expectation can be liberating. Breaking a promise, violating consent, or exploiting a power imbalance is not romantic rebellion. It is harm wrapped in drama. As attraction becomes physical, insecurity often appears. Am I desirable enough? Am I worthy of this? What does this person really see in me? A skilled communicator can help another person feel valued beyond appearance. But a manipulator may turn desire into destiny, making ordinary attraction seem like a divine command that cannot be questioned. Gustave Flaubert explored this in Madame Bovary. Rodolphe does not simply pursue Emma with physical desire. He speaks in the language of fate, higher truths, and inevitable connection. The affair begins to feel ordained. Emma can then interpret her decision not as a choice, but as something written into the universe. That is the danger of romantic fatalism. Meaning can deepen a relationship, but it should not erase agency. You may feel that someone is extraordinary. You may experience a connection as rare. But meant to be should never become an argument against caution. The healthiest version of this principle is to honor the emotional significance of desire while remaining honest about what it is, a powerful feeling, not proof of destiny. Warmth creates attachment. But when warmth is mixed with rejection, the attachment can become compulsive. Josephine understood this dynamic in her relationship with Napoleon. At times, she offered affection and attention. At other times, she became distant. The uncertainty intensified his pursuit. He did not simply want her affection. He wanted relief from the pain of losing it. This is the cycle of intermittent reinforcement. A person receives warmth unpredictably. The uncertainty makes every moment of affection feel more valuable. They begin working harder for the next reward. This is not deeper love. It is a psychological trap. Jealousy, withdrawal, silent treatment, humiliation, and sudden reconciliation can create the illusion of passion while gradually destroying emotional safety. If a relationship repeatedly makes you anxious, then briefly rewards you for enduring that anxiety, pay attention to the pattern. Pleasure should not depend on pain. Conflict can be repaired, but pain should never be deliberately manufactured as proof of love. Every intense relationship reaches moments of decision. Secrets are shared. Promises are made. Risks are taken. The emotional investment grows. Napoleon's attachment to Josephine remained powerful even after their divorce. Memory, sacrifice, conflict, and longing had created a bond that continued beyond the relationship itself. That is the force of emotional investment. But investment should never be used to make leaving feel impossible. A manipulator may accumulate secrets, guilt, debt, and shared transgressions until the other person feels trapped by everything they have already given. This is not devotion. It is entrapment. A healthy relationship leaves room for reconsideration. People are allowed to change their minds. They are allowed to step back after intimacy. They are allowed to end a relationship even after making promises. No one owes permanence because they once felt certain. The true point of no return is not the moment someone loses the ability to leave. It is the moment two people choose to remain, freely, clearly, and without coercion. Phase 4, Conquest. The final phase is conquest. In Greene's model, this is where mental attraction moves toward physical surrender. But surrender is a dangerous word. No one should be maneuvered into surrendering their judgment, their boundaries, or their freedom. The ethical goal is not conquest. It is a mutual choice. Attraction may create tension, physical presence may intensify it, but the final movement must remain clear, enthusiastic, and reversible. If one person does all the pursuing, the relationship becomes unbalanced. The other person may become passive, uncertain, or dependent on being chased. Casanova understood the power of absence. He sometimes disappeared long enough for curiosity to grow. The person left behind began filling the silence with imagination. Madame Sabatier experienced something similar through anonymous letters. The unknown admirer became an idea before becoming a person. By the time Charles Baudelaire revealed himself, her imagination had already created an emotional attachment. She had been partly seduced by her own longing. This demonstrates the power of absence. But absence should create room, not panic. Do not delay responses to make someone anxious. Do not vanish to force pursuit. Do not turn affection into a test. The healthy alternative is mutual initiative. Let the other person contact you because they want to, not because they are afraid you have withdrawn your approval. Attraction becomes stronger when effort moves in both directions. Some people attract through conversation. Others do it through presence. Caroline Otero, the celebrated performer known as La Belle Otero, understood the expressive power of movement, posture, rhythm, and physical confidence. Her appeal did not depend on explanation. It was communicated through the body. A glance can express interest. A relaxed posture can communicate comfort. A person leaning closer may be inviting connection. But body language is not a secret code. A glance is not consent. Silence is not consent. Physical closeness is not consent. Bodies communicate possibilities, not final answers. The most respectful form of presence is attentive rather than presumptuous. Notice the signals, but confirm the meaning. When the atmosphere changes, do not force it into a conclusion. Ask. Clarity does not destroy desire. Fear destroys desire. Seduction cannot remain ambiguous forever. At some point, someone must speak. The bold move is often described as a sudden action that releases built-up tension. In historical stories, the moment works because the seducer appears to act just as the other person becomes ready. But history often tells these stories from the perspective of the winner. It leaves out the uncertainty, the hesitation, the possibility that the other person did not want what happened next. A clear move does not mean forcing a dramatic moment. It means expressing interest directly. Would you like to go out with me? Can I kiss you? Do you want to continue? These questions may seem less cinematic than an unexpected gesture. They are more powerful because they preserve freedom. The boldness is not in ignoring uncertainty. The boldness is in accepting the possibility of hearing no. Desire becomes meaningful when it survives clarity. The moment of conquest is not the end. It is the beginning of consequence. Excitement fades into ordinary life. Fantasy meets reality. The person you idealized becomes human again, with habits, limitations, contradictions, and needs. This is where many seductions collapse. Napoleon never fully escaped the memory of Josephine. Even after their divorce and his later marriage, she remained emotionally present in his life. The relationship had ended. The story had not. That is the paradox of seduction. The same intensity that creates attachment can later create disappointment. Once the tension is released, the illusion may weaken. The person may feel guilt, confusion, suspicion, or emptiness. And the seducer may suddenly notice flaws that fantasy had concealed. There are only two honest ways forward. If the connection is worth preserving, replace performance with truth. Communicate. Settle into reality. Allow the relationship to become less dramatic and more genuine. Do not keep inventing jealousy, distance, or uncertainty simply to recreate the first rush. And if the connection must end it clearly. Do not keep someone attached through vague promises, occasional affection, or carefully timed nostalgia. A clean ending may hurt. A prolonged illusion wounds more deeply. Seduction is often described as theater, but relationships are not theater forever. At some point, the costumes come off, the atmosphere fades, the audience leaves. What remains is character, not how powerfully you attracted someone, not how completely you occupied their imagination, but whether you treated their freedom as sacred while they were drawn toward you. Because the final test of seduction is not whether someone surrendered. It is whether, after the spell was broken, both people were still able to recognize themselves. The Art of Seduction is ultimately a book about human hunger. The hunger to be seen, to escape, to feel young, beautiful, powerful, understood, or alive. Its darkest lessons show how easily these needs can be exploited. Its most useful lessons reveal how attraction is built through attention, imagination, emotional presence, and mystery. But the highest form of seduction is not control. It is the ability to make another person feel more fully themselves in your presence. Not smaller, not trapped, not dependent, more alive. Because attraction may begin with mystery, but lasting connection requires truth. The most dangerous seducer is the person who understands desire but has no conscience. And the most powerful person is the one who understands desire without becoming controlled by it.